So my name is Meng, and the title of this talk assigned to me today is Dhamma in conflict with success? So first, I'm going to use the word Dharma instead of Dhamma for a very simple reason. The word Dharma is an English word, and we know that because it's in the Oxford English Dictionary. So where possible, I use English words, and if the English word doesn't exist, then I use the Pali word. So Dharma. Next is to define the word Dharma. If you see the word Dharma used in the old Buddhist scriptures, you find that the application is very broad. It is as broad as literally everything. So Dharma means like everything. So for example, the Buddha say all Dhammas are without self. And when he said that, the word Dhamma means all phenomenon. Right? So it's a really, really broad word. Like basically, like literally encapsulates everything. But the best definition of Dharma that I know of, and especially for this talk, is I define Dharma as universal law, especially the subset of universal law that has to do with the nature of suffering and liberation from suffering. And the Buddha's explanation, or the way the Buddha talked about Dharma, that version is Buddha Dharma. And if you define Dharma in that way, straight away you notice something. Straight away you notice that there's nothing religious about Dharma. Because Dharma is entirely secular, because it's about suffering and how to be free from suffering. And suffering, unfortunately, is secular. So there's nothing that says, oh yeah, this religion, then you don't suffer. We all suffer. And because we all suffer, the same nature of suffering, the paths out of suffering or the relief of suffering are also very similar for everybody. I give you a kind of a stupid example. If you hit your head with a hammer, that's painful. If you don't do that, that's not painful, right? So that is nature of suffering and liberation from suffering, right? Nothing religious about it. Hammer and head. So Dharma is universal. It's like every religion we can think of, even secular form of teachings, we find Dharma, right? As long as it concerns nature of suffering and liberation from suffering. What distinguishes the Buddha's teaching is that he has a very systematic and very deep view of this topic. So to me, that's why the Buddha Dharma is appealing to me. But at the same time, so I'll speak Buddha Dharma, but at the same time, don't feel that Buddha Dharma is the only Dharma. It's just one possible way of presenting Dharma. So given that, the answer to the original question, is Dharma in conflict with success? The two simplistic answers. One is yes, the other is no. And in my opinion, both answers are incomplete. And the way I experience it at least in two distinct phases. And your mileage may vary, and I'll tell you why and how it will vary. But this is how I experience it. I started off with practice, and then I came to the knowledge. So that I started with Dharma practice, and then I learned about Dharma, and the learning actually came naturally. Right? As my practice deepens, I start to notice insights, and then as I read the Buddha's teachings, they all make sense. But I know that some of you start from reverse. You start with learning about teaching, and then you do your practice. So because of that, your experience may differ with mine. But so the way I experienced it was two distinct phases. There's a shallow phase, a shallow Dharma phase, and a deep Dharma phase. And in the shallow Dharma phase, at that stage, the practice is on developing and building certain basic emotional and mental skills. And there are three practices. The first practice is what they call shamatha. Shamatha basically means calm abiding in calmness. But not just abiding in calmness. Also, the mind is calm, clear, so alert, serene, and it's not like spacing out, but there's a certain concentration, and it's joyful. So that was the first leg. Shall we do 10 seconds of that? Okay, very easy. It's what we did before, but it's good to reinforce it. 10 seconds. Let's bring total attention, total but gentle attention to the process of breathing. And allow the mind to calm down. Just like that. 10 seconds beginning now. Thank you. Sorry, I cheated. That was 12 seconds. Was that enjoyable, by the way? Yeah, it's quite enjoyable, right? Like to be at that state of mind and body where you are restful and at peace, and then it's just joyful. So that is shamatha. That's the first leg. The second leg, or the second pillar, is vipassana, which means insight, which means using the attention, the calm and clear attention, to self-reflect and see the process of emotion and process of cognition. Basically beginning with the body. So let's do 10 seconds of that. The instruction, again, very simple. For 10 seconds, I allow you to bring attention to the body. And whatever arises in the body, just see it arising. And if it fades away, see it fade away. Maybe let's do 20 seconds because you're now advanced. Okay? 20 seconds beginning now. Just watching the body and whatever phenomenon arises and passes away. And thank you for your attention. That is the second pillar. The third pillar is kindness and compassion. I don't need to expand on that. Everybody knows what that means. Practice is also very simple. Shall we do 10 seconds of practice? Okay, very easy. Bring to mind somebody you care about. And then just think, I wish for this person to be happy. And then if there's any feeling, just bring attention to that feeling. And 10 seconds beginning now. And with that, thank you for your attention. Did everybody enjoy that practices, by the way? Yeah, kind of nice. So if you do a lot of those practices, what happens? What happens over time is that you begin to develop certain mental and emotional faculties or abilities. One is, for example, the ability to deal with triggers. Right? So something happened, the boss or somebody you care about say something, and then you get very angry, get triggered. So normally you just blow up, and then you say something and you regret later. Right? But with these practices we just practice. You notice that you now have the ability to deal with a trigger. For example, I'm going to stand up because I get more energy. Okay, huh? So, for example, there's a standard practice called Siberian North Railroad, SBNRR. S to stop. So that's a trigger, right? So first thing you do is stop. Don't say anything for the next 5 seconds, right? And then next thing is you notice. Notice this body. Notice that's what's happening. And then B, breathe. And then you reflect what just happened. And then you reflect in a way that's objective. Oh, Joe said something to me. He was not trying to insult me. He just giving me feedback that he thinks is useful. And then respond with compassion. So there's a step to do that. There's a system. And the ability to execute on that depends on the ability to execute what we just did. Right? The ability to calm the mind, the shamatha, allows you to stop. The ability to do vipassana, with self-reflect, allows you to notice. The ability to do kindness and compassion allows you to do reflect and respond. So these practices eventually leads you to a group, a whole collection of mental and emotional abilities that include, first, the obvious one, concentration. Right? You can bring your mind to something, keep your mind on the subject, even though it's boring, even though it's unpleasant. And so straight away, you get if you are in school, straight away your exam, your points improve. Right? And I'm not just saying it, it's actually been proven. There's been study done on this. 140 minutes. So there was a group of students. They did mindfulness for 10 minutes a day for 2 weeks. 140 minutes of practice. 140 minutes of practice, the exam score went up measurably. Right? So the first thing is concentration. But beyond concentration, you also develop a group of other abilities. Self-awareness. Beginning with emotional awareness. Moment to moment knowing what I'm feeling right now. In an objective way. Right? Being able to disassociate from yourself and say, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm feeling. And that brings you another ability, which is self-assessment. Right? If you do this moment to moment often enough, eventually you arrive at a place where you know these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, this is what makes me happy, this is who I am. And then you begin to answer very profound questions about yourself. Who am I? Why am I here? What are my purposes? What are my values? So on, right? Life-changing stuff. And also you start to have empathy and social skills. Start to deal with people in a way that is skillful, that get things done, and people still love you. So one example of somebody who can do that, one of my bosses, her name is Karen. She's a vice president, she still is, a VP at Google. The thing about Karen is everybody loves her. I mean, she's effective, right? Because she's still a VP. It's hard to be VP. It's hard to stay as VP in Google. And everybody loves her. And those people who she fires, after she fires them, they still love her. Right? It's amazing. And so she has that ability. So this collection of ability, there's actually a name for it. It's emotional intelligence. So through practicing Dharma, in my case, accidentally, I developed EI. And then I became more successful. And of course, eventually I kind of figured it out, and then we packaged it in a class called Search Inside Yourself. Right? And then it's like entirely secular, so everybody can take it. It became the most popular class in Google, and now it's out in the world and so on. But the key thing is this, is at this stage, the practice of Dharma leads you to develop emotional intelligence. And that correlates with success. So I'll give you a simple example. Self-assessment. It turns out that for a leader, self-assessment is one of the most important abilities. If you don't have accurate self-assessment, you will not be a successful leader. Right? For a very simple reason, because none of us are perfect. Right? So if you're not perfect, the more you're aware of your strengths and weaknesses and so on, and your values, the more you are able to have people around you who compensate for your weaknesses and complement your strength. And the stronger your values are, the more your people can look at you and know what you're standing for, and then it improves your ability to lead them. Right? So this example of self-awareness leading to high performance at work. So at this stage of practicing Dharma, there is absolutely no conflict. Right? The entire practice of Dharma improves your success at work. So you get both at once. You get two for the price of one. Very worth. Tan Diu, or they say what? Right? You get to practice the Dharma, do what you need to do to be a good human being, and you find that you're successful, you're earning more money, you're getting promoted, everybody loves you. And when you fire people, they still love you. So that's stage one for me. And then what happened for me? Stage two, I entered a distinct stage, which is that as my Dharma practice deepened, so as I practice deepened, and I started learning about the Dharma knowledge, what the Buddha says, right? In addition to what he said you should be practicing, but what he teaches about. Some things came up, and those are powerful. So what came up? The first one, okay, this is not something he said. This is a consequence of practice. The first one, which is a good thing, but it became a problem, is that your inner joy becomes so strong that you no longer need to be successful. So remember earlier we were doing shamatha, like we calm the mind. And I said that in addition to calmness and clarity and stability, you experience joy. So the more you practice it, you find that the more joyful you become. And then after a while, I'm going to quote Ajahn Brahm. You experience a joy that's even better than sex. Even better than sex. That's amazing. So imagine that, like in the middle of the day, right? You just sit down. Whoa. And then, wow, that's extreme happiness. Then imagine you can do this reliably, right? Maybe not once a day, but every now and then, like at least once a week or whatever the duration is, you can have access to that kind of joy. Don't need promotion, don't need a nice car, don't need anything. You can just do that. Life-changing. But therein lies a problem. It's like no incentive to work anymore. Which is a problem, but it gets worse. Right? So the way I heard this from Eckhart Tolle. For the extreme case, the yogis don't even want to eat because there's no incentive to eat because they're happy all day. So not healthy. I mean, literally not healthy. So don't do that. But that is a problem. So that was one. Next thing was insights. So as your vipassana sharpens, right, you look into the process of involved with self, the process of emotion, process of cognition. Something happens, which is that as your practice deepens further and further, you may get into an insight that there's never been such a thing called a self. Right? There's moments of selflessness. Right? First, it's very liberating. The reason it's very liberating is because most of life's problem has to do with self. Right? Some large percentage of that has to do with identity. So if you look at a lot of problems we have, there's an emotional element. Let's say you fight with somebody who you care about, or your boss or something. There's an emotion, right? There's the feeling right now. There is an element there's an emotion, but fundamentally below that, there's an element of identity. Who does he think I am? Like, I am. That's identity. Or, in this fight, it's like, am I a good person? Right? Am I right? So it's about me. Right? So therefore, once you are able to find the realization, see for yourself that identity is entirely created by the mind. And then realize that even though it's so painful, it's just entirely created by mind. I give you two analogies. I give you an analogy and I give you a process. Analogy is, a lunar eclipse. So imagine, like, when my grandmother was young, and I still remember hearing those stories. When my grandmother was young, when there was a lunar eclipse, it's very clear what happened. Yeah, 天狗食业, the heavenly dog is trying to eat the moon. Right? So everybody in the village, there's obvious what you need to do. You need to save the moon. Otherwise, the moon will disappear, consumed by the heavenly dog. So everybody comes out and they bang the pots and pans. And then eventually, the heavenly dog says, okay, I have enough, I'm done. Run away, and then your moon comes back, yay. And then what happened? Eventually, somebody figured out that the lunar eclipse is nothing more than a shadow of Earth on the moon. And then once you have that insight, what happens? It looks as it's still nothing changed, right? You look at the moon, the lunar eclipse, it still looks as if a monster just ate the moon. However, your behavior, your mental state, entirely different. You no longer feel the need to bang pots and pans to chase away the heavenly dog. Right? You know this is just a change. So therefore, this is one of those examples where even though sensation and perception remain constant, however, insight changes experience. And it's the same way when you break into non-selfness. And here's the process. The process is that so you have this calmness of mind, clarity, stability of attention. Then imagine this. Sometimes you dream, right? When you fall asleep, you dream. Then sometimes when you dream, you are an entirely different person. Right? So when you dream, you're no longer Joanne, you are somebody else. And then wake up, you're Joanne again. And in between falling asleep and dreaming, Joanne disappeared. And then another identity. Let's call her Jill. Jill came up. He became Jill. Right? So in between the process of Joanne disappearing and before Jill appeared, there's no identity. So the practice is to keep your attention clear in this process. And then you find that this identity thing is entirely created by mind. There is no substance. And once you have the insight in daily life, you come back, daily life still like when you have a fight, still is you have the sensation is the same, the perception is the same. Who does he think I am? Right? And so on. But the experience is different. The suffering is different. Right? So this is the power of insight. And insight is so powerful that to a certain degree, in the practices of Dharma, Buddhism, it is all about insight. And the states that you practice, the states of calmness and whatever, clarity, they are all entirely just to bring you to insight. And one of the key insights is there has never been such a thing called a self. Not that we destroy the self, but there's never been such a thing called a self. Right? It's powerful insight. Another insight, I'm debating myself whether to talk about this now. Okay, later. This word, nibbida, Nibbida. Nibbida is often translated in English as disenchantment. You get disenchanted with things that used to cause you pleasure. So, for example, sensory pleasure, alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever it is, right? And ego pleasure, being the vice president, whatever, being a leader, people looking up to you. All those things, you get disenchanted with it. And in disenchantment, the literal meaning of nibbida is very useful. Nibbida literally means not finding. So what does not finding mean? And the Buddha gave a very useful analogy. He says it's like a dog eating a bone. And this bone it's been there in the sun for very long. So there's completely no flesh on it. It's just bone. So usually there's some flesh, the dog will like, very delicious. But in this case, the bone has nothing. It's just bone. So when the dog started chewing the bone, first thing is, oh, bone, yay, right? So there's a delight. And then started chewing, and then what happened? The dog's saliva started being on the bone, and oh, juicy, yay, right? And after a couple of seconds, the dog realized, wait, there's nothing here. There's no taste. It's just my saliva. And the dog says, there's nothing to be found here. Finding nothing. Nibbida. And because of that, the dog says, disenchanted. I'm not interested in this bone anymore. So in the practice, you'll find that eventually every pleasant ego experience is empty. There's nothing there. And the reason it's nothing there is part of it is because of its impermanence, right? It's just that oh, I got promoted to VP, and then what? 2 days, 3 days later, whatever. yeah, but I'm not CEO, whatever. Right? My friend is senior VP. I'm not. Right? It disappears very quickly. Part of it is just you thinking about it. There's no substance to it. So it's impermanent and insubstantial. Part of it is you're going to die anyway. So it's death, right? It's like, if you die and it makes CEO, like on a tombstone, nobody's going to say, so-and-so, Joe, he was CEO, right? They will say, Joe, a good man, whatever. But nobody cares you're CEO when you die. You don't care. You're the least to care because you're already dead. Right? Same thing with sensory pleasures. And again, the Buddha has a very nice description of sensory pleasure. He says sensory pleasure are like borrowing money from a loan shark. So you get to spend it now, but later on you pay extra. You pay a lot of interest. Same thing. So every sensory pleasure that you experience now, it deepens your, your addiction, your reliance on sensory pleasure. And therefore, in the future, you find that if you want to be free from sensory pleasure, free from the slavery of sensory pleasure, it's even harder. Right? So you're paying a debt. So part of nibbida is this realization over time. And it's true the practices we talk about. It's true vipassana, looking at all these experiences, looking at the impermanence, arising and falling of pleasure, arising and falling pain, and realizing all that pleasure, nothing there, nothing to be found, disenchantment. And with disenchantment, and there's another experience that follows very closely, which in Pali is samvega. And samvega means that there is this shock that there's nothing in this life that will bring me permanent happiness. And there's one practice in particular that's very useful for bringing you to samvega. And the practice is something the Buddha recommended. It's called the five contemplations. And the Buddha said, every now and then, to me every now and then means every day. But every now and then, do this, he says. Remember these 5 things. Number 1, I am subject to old age. In my case, I'm already there. So I am subject to old age. Number 2, I am subject to illness. Number 3, I am subject to death. By the way, not just I'm subject, I will die. I mean, the first 2 maybe not, because you might die before you get old. But the third one, I will die. Right? Number 4, everything that I hold dear, every person that I hold dear, eventually will all be taken away from me. Everything I hold dear will be taken away from me. And number 5, I am the creator of my karma. I am heir of my karma. I am the master of my karma. So you remember these 5 things, and very soon you get samvega. So holy, I'm recorded, so I'm not supposed to say some words. So holy no. This is bad. Not just this is bad, there's no solution. The only solution is what Buddha called nirvana, which is the escape from thirst, right? The thirst to be, the thirst to not be, and the thirst for sensory pleasure. I say sensory pleasure and also ego pleasure. That's the only solution. Get out of being a slave of those things. Otherwise, there's no solutions. As long as we're a slave of one thing, of wanting pleasure and avoiding pain, we will suffer. Right? So we have all these experiences. And my guess is that everybody who is a sincere practitioner of Dharma, again, not just Buddha Dharma, but Dharma in general, we will arrive at this conclusion sooner or later, for the very simple reason that is the truth. Right? I mean, if your practice is to look closely at truth, eventually you will see truth. And the truth is everything contained in the 5 contemplations. Right? And samvega. So when that happens, the next thing that happens is renunciation becomes very attractive. So there's nothing here for me. Anyway, right? Then you think of renunciation. And so first thing is renunciation is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's not a bad thing in general. And we know that because it's of the 8 noble truths, it's in the second one. Samma sankappa, right intention. So the Buddha said there are 3 right intentions. They are goodwill. Goodwill basically means kindness, loving kindness, harmlessness or ahimsa, and renunciation. And when the Buddha said renunciation here, he doesn't necessarily mean to be a monk or be a nun. He means renunciate your addiction, your being a slave of pleasure, of sensory and ego pleasure. Right? So there is a very nice, phrase here. And this is from the Diamond Sutra. And this is in chapter 32 of the Dhamma Sutra. It's at the end. So because it's at the end, you know how important it is. And so I tell you, I quote you the Chinese, the original Chinese. And then there's a very nice English translation I found on the web, and I'll use that. I'll quote it as well. So Chinese is this: 一切有为法，如梦幻泡影，如露亦如电，应作如是观. So the English is, this is how you should contemplate conditioned existence in this world. Like a tiny drop of dew, or a bubble floating in a stream, like a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, or a flickering lamp, an illusion, a phantom, or a dream. So all conditioned existence is to be seen. So this is renunciation. Seeing things as they are. And they are nothing more than bubbles, lightning, flash of lightning, illusion, flickering lamp. So, for me, I arrived at that point. And you might notice that this appears to be in conflict with success. Right? It's like, how do I think about having a successful career and have those thoughts in the background all the time? Right? Sometime I'm going to die. All this is worth nothing. Blah, blah, blah. And worse still, they are the truth. Right? So I cannot escape the truth. What to do? I've observed people who went through the process, and there are usually 3 outcomes. Of the 3 outcomes, one I think is not so good. You may disagree. One I think is not so good. The other 2 I think are good. Again, you may disagree. So the problematic outcome is a phenomenon in America we call Zen bums. So Zen bums, B-U-M-S. Sometimes they call Dhamma bums. So there's people, bums, right? People are bumming around. They don't do anything. And if you go to San Francisco or California, you visit those Zen centers or Dharma centers, you see those people, right? They just hang out. They volunteer in the center. Sometimes they get paid a little bit. Sometimes they get housing. But they don't do much. They just basically hang out, right? And they don't practice much as well. For my opinion. They're not sitting like 3-4 hours a day. They're just hanging out. So for me, I think this is kind of one of the ways this could result. Right? You see phenomenon, empty as it is, so you opt out every day and hang out. In my opinion, not healthy. But again, you could disagree with me. Huh? Sorry? Top knot? With a man bun? Man bun, yes, right. Optional man bun. For those who have hair. Sorry. There are 2 other outcomes which are healthy, and they have something in common. And I want to talk about that one, that's something. So the other 2 outcomes, one is people go pro. Go pro means they become professional as practitioners. Usually that means they become monks. Or monks or nuns. Right? And like the good monks and nuns, not those who just and then smoke. Right? But those who actually practice. Right? Those who do their meditation 10 hours a day or whatever is required of them. And they become teachers. Monks and nuns. I say usually, because that's not always true. I found a few examples of that where that's not true, and they are, to me, fascinating. And some of these people you might have heard of. One of them is Joseph Goldstein. Some of you heard of Joseph Goldstein because he's a famous author. He's also a pioneer of Dharma in America. And Joseph today, so just think about Joseph. I haven't met him. He's one of those few Dharma people in the US I haven't met. And the reason is because he hardly leaves New York, and I hardly leave California. And then there's like a continent in between us. But what I've heard about Joseph from somebody who's extremely skeptical about Dharma, this person says Joseph is at least a Sotapanna. So yeah, so it's how high level he is. So it's at least the first level of enlightenment. And Joseph, as far as I know, he lives like a monk. He has an apartment. He has an income. So he has a car. So he has property. But he lives alone. And he doesn't have a sex life. And he practices for a couple of hours a day. And he teaches. So it's basically a modern version of a monk. In a healthy way, I think. Right? Because having that lifestyle allows him to have some freedom that other monks don't have. He has property. He can travel wherever he wants to or needs to. Right? He has a car and so on. Right? And he, like I said, lives a pure life. So, and he's not the only example. I know of at least one more. One of my teachers, Shaila, in California, can live roughly that lifestyle. So there are people like that. And that's an option, right? So they devote the rest of their lives to practice and teaching, which I think, in my opinion, a good outcome, healthy outcome. Another outcome are people who continue engaging in the secular world, even after having those insights. Like everything is empty, everything is unsatisfactory. Continue secular, continue doing businesses, continue working. Why? Usually for two reasons. The first reason, usually out of compassion for loved ones. Right? So usually these people have commitments. They have families, the kids, or they have to take care of their parents and whatever. So they have no choice but to work. And the most healthy way to frame that for themselves and also in general is that this is a practice of compassion. It's compassion for those people who need their income stream. So they're still working. The second group, for those who engage in the secular world, is our compassion for the world. Right? They didn't have to work. They can just sit in the cave all day. But they're doing this because other people are suffering. And that's why they're out in the world. And again, I have one example of such a person. His name is Shoryu. He started a monastic academy, and he works much harder than me. He has something like 20 or 30 students full-time. He's a strict enough teacher that he expects his students to reach Sotapatti within 3 years. Yeah. So that's strict. Yeah. And like I said, he works much harder than I do. I make jokes about him all the time. Not jokes I can tell on camera. Sorry. And in these groups of all these people who I think have the healthy outcomes, right? Those who go pro and those who are engaging in the secular world for these two reasons, they all have one thing in common. And what's the one thing in common? Compassion. All of them are motivated by compassion. Right? It's like they have all these skills, all this power, and they realize that this world there's nothing here. And yet, they're still doing it. Why? Because it's service. Right? And in my opinion and in my experience, when you're at that stage, you are even more likely to be successful. Because now there's nothing holding you back. Like previously, you're still held back by the need to be successful, the need to get promotion. Even though you have all these emotional intelligence skills, you still have those needs. They still hold you back. You still cannot take a risk, for example. Right? You still cannot go to the boss and say, boss, I think you're wrong. You don't have the courage because Scully boss said me how. Right? But once you're at this stage, you're doing this entirely for compassion, for service of others. And you already have all those skills, your courage and your insight and your clear mind and so on. Then you go to the boss, you're wrong, and this is why. Then most of the time that frees you to do big things. So that's my experience. And I take inspiration from two stories. By the way, how much time do I have? Is it 1 hour, 2 hour talk? I don't know. 1.5 hour. Okay. 2 hour talk. Or 1.5. Okay. I meant say 1.5. Okay, sorry. Sorry, I've been telling stories too much. But I tell two stories that inspired me. One story involves a rotting rat carcass. So this story is found from the Chinese sage Zhuangzi in his book called Zhuangzi, which is a recording of all his teachings. So for those who don't know Zhuangzi, in Taoism, Zhuangzi is the second most important teacher in Taoism, a main figure. The top one is obviously Lao Tzu, right, the founder of Taoism. Zhuangzi was number 2. And Zhuangzi told a story. Let me see, I'm just wondering, so I tell the whole story. Okay, I won't tell the whole story. I'll tell you the compact version. Compact version of the story is this. There is, once upon a time, there's a phoenix. This phoenix, magnificent bird. This phoenix is so pure. It doesn't drink anything except the purest mountain dew. It doesn't eat anything except the youngest of bamboo shoots. Like perfectly pure. So one day the phoenix was flying. And then on the ground, there is a dead rat, a rotten carcass of a dead rat. And of course, the phoenix wouldn't just ignore it, right? It's like, such a pure bird, just totally ignore this. And at the rat nest, there's a crow. And the crow saw the dead rat. So he said, oh, mine. So the crow sat on top of a rat. Mine, right? And then the crow saw the phoenix fly past. And the crow started shouting at the phoenix, don't take my dead rat. Right? And this analogy, Zhuangzi told this analogy because somebody thought he wanted to be prime minister. And he said, I'm like a phoenix. The power and privilege is like a dead rat. I won't touch it. It's like people like you. He's pointing to his friend. People like you who want the prime ministership, not me. However, so first, yes, I agree with it. Somebody with purity of heart, if you're practicing through Dharma, then your heart is so pure that power and privilege and wealth looks like dead rats to you. However, and this is where I differ, for somebody who practices compassion, for somebody taking on the Bodhisattva path, that Zhuangzi's reaction not always the right one. I'll give you an example. Supposing you're in a playground, right? All the kids are playing, and then supposing there's a rotting dead rat carcass. Right? Normally, you won't touch it. That's the right thing to do, to not touch it. However, if the kid's playing and you are the only adult around, then the only responsible thing for you to do is to pick up the dead rat, throw it away. You have to approach the dead rat, you have to pick it up, maybe with a stick or something, but it's your responsibility as a human being. There's no other responsible way, no other responsible behavior. And I think that is the path of the Bodhisattva. Even though you're supposed to be pure, even though your practice is pure, still, the world is not perfect. And sometimes the only responsible thing for you to do as a Bodhisattva is to pick up dead rats. In other words, assume positions of authority, assume power, gain a wealth, whatever it is. Those things, they will definitely corrupt you. And you have to do it for benefit of everybody else. So that was my inspiration, right? So that's why I encourage people who have deep practices, especially those who have reached Sotapadhi. It's like, good, now reached Sotapadhi, go back to the business world. Go change them. So that's one. There's another story. Let's see. This is involving Huineng. Huineng was the sixth patriarch of Zen Buddhism in China. And the story was that after Huineng became enlightened, and between that, his full enlightenment, by the way, not partial enlightenment, full enlightenment, after that, and before the time he assumed the abbotship of I think Southern Shaolin or something, some temple. He was recognized as a sixth patriarch, Liu Zhu. Right? Between those two events, there were 15 years. And in those 15 years, Huineng spent his time in a hunter's camp with hunters. So this guy, fully enlightened, vegetarian, and spent 15 years with hunters. Why? I mean, he doesn't have to. I mean, maybe they say Tao Nan, he's running away from the enemy, but maybe after the first year he can leave. But he spent 14 more years. So in the scripture, it was not clear what he did. But in scripture, all we know is that he spends 15 years with hunters. And so I take inspiration from there. Right? So for me, expression of compassion means that I have to apply my practices in the real world for the benefit of humanity at the cost to my own karma sometimes. At least sometimes. But actually more than sometimes. And why? It's the same reason Huineng spend time with hunters. For the same reason. We make sacrifices. So, therefore, in that situation, it is compatible. Your Dharma becomes compatible with success. So, okay, this is my last part. I know one situation where Dharma and success are, I know for certain to be incompatible. I know for one situation where they're compatible. So based on everything I just said. The one situation where I know is incompatible is when Samvega is strong and Pasada is weak. So what does that mean? So we talk about Samvega. Samvega is the realization that life as it exists in this world will never bring you lasting happiness. There's no way. Right? That's the realization. Pasada is the balancing force. Pasada is the confidence in the teaching. Right? So you learn Dharma, whether from the Buddha or anybody else, but you learn Dharma, you practice Dharma, it brings you peace and joy, happiness, and realize I have confidence in this teaching. So these are the two balancing forces. So usually, these two things should be applied together. Because if you only have Samvega, what happens? Very depressing, right? You want to give up. Nothing works. You want to give up on your job. Not just that, a lot of people give up on their lives. And it happened even during the lifetime of the Buddha. Right? There are monks who didn't have meditation practice, but they hear the Dharma, they hear that life is suffering, blah, 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 so they end up killing themselves. And the Buddha had to go to those guys and say, guys, stop killing yourselves. Do your meditation, damn it. He didn't say damn it. but he taught them anapanasati, mindfulness of breath. Supposedly that's where it was first taught, as a practice, self-contained practice. So that is Samvega only. Pasada only has a reverse problem. You have confidence in teaching because you have tasted the fruits, you're joyful and blah, blah, blah. Then what happens? No urgency. All day just sit there and bliss out. And you become a Zen bum. So in that situation, Samvega gives you the urgency, right, to work towards enlightenment. And then Pasada gives you the engine power to propel you forward. So they'll be together. So in the situation where if you know the knowledge but you don't know the practice or you don't do the practice, then you have Samvega strong, Pasada weak, then your success and Dharma becomes incompatible. Right? However, there's a situation where they're fully compatible. And there are three conditions. The first condition is Samvega is strong and Pasada is strong, which I talked about. The second condition is your compassion is strong. And the third condition is that you're using, so in addition to all this, you're using your daily life as the zendo for practice. So every difficult situation that you encounter, this is part of my practice. It's not a distraction from my practice. It is part of practice. Every pain you suffer, this is the practice. Every joy you have, this is the practice. Right? Even unhealthy joy, like junk food, this is the practice. Because now you see for yourself what the Buddha means, right? This is the depth, right? I enjoy it now, I pay back later. So this is it. And so my final message is this. I'd like to encourage everybody to practice the Dharma. So specifically, like I said, shamatha, vipassana, metta, karuna. Metta means loving kindness. Karuna means compassion. And if you do these things, then you'll find that your success and the Dharma not just have no conflict, they help each other. So you grow in both dimensions. And you will be a better person, you will gain enlightenment, and you'll be plenty of success. So with that, before we go to Q&A, I want to invite my brother to come up and lead a long-ish sitting. Long-ish, about 5 minutes? Yeah, double of what I did. Okay, how? Everybody? Okay.
Not you.
Okay, let's see. By when must we break? Is it 4:30 or 5?
We can take the Q&A until 5. Then we can end, yeah.
Okay. 4:45.
4:45,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, we can take questions until 4:45.
Yeah. Anybody has any questions?
Yes, Joanne.
My question is about how to deepen one's meditation practice. I guess for beginners, a lot of the advice is to just start, with baby step, 10 minutes in the morning, establish a routine.
Yeah.
After one has done that, what next? Any thoughts on guided versus unguided meditations? Meditation apps are extremely popular, can be very helpful. So that's one. And then the second question is, how important is the duration of the meditation? Is it 10 minutes times 3 sessions a day, or should we be targeting for one sit of 30 minutes, for example?
Sorry, I'm organizing data. There is a very important, there are a couple of important analogies based on, that talks about what you just said. There's one important analogy that has to do with starting a fire. So in the old days, in the Buddha's time, to start a fire, what they did was they think the bowl, right? They rub two pieces of wood together, right? And then they keep rubbing until the spark. So they prepare fire, they prepare dry materials around it, and then until there's a spark, then fire, right? The feature of that is that in order to start a fire, there needs to be intensity and duration, right? So for example, you cannot just like do it for 10 hours, nothing happens. This is duration without intensity. If you do in the other way, no fire. So in order to create a fire, you have to have certain intensity for a certain amount of time. So that's a very important analogy. And so that answers half the question already. There's another analogy which has to do with perfume. Right? So this is an old Tibetan analogy. If you have a very strong perfume, open it up and then close it, the room will smell nice for a long time. But if you have very weak perfume, you open up, you have to open for a very long time before the room smells nice. So you combine those together. The perfume analogy answers one of the questions is how should my daily practice be for normal people? And I like to suggest, again, there are a couple of answers, but I like to suggest that if you have to choose between short and intense versus long and not intense, choose short and intense, right? There's also an argument for the reverse, which is my brother spent a lot of time doing the reverse because he's on an airplane and he spent a lot of time just sitting there, not very intense. And that gives a lot of knowledge as well.
Yeah, you want me to share my view?
Let me, after I talk about this, I'll come back to you. So my suggestion is, I think either one works. I have a preference for short and intense because we're all very busy, right? So it's very hard to find time. But if you're on the airplane, you have that option as well, long and not so intense. However, whichever one you arrive at, you eventually, if you want to deepen it, there's no escaping long and intense eventually. And so my suggestion is this, is once you get comfortable with sitting for some duration, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, you're comfortable with the idea of sitting, go on a retreat. Go on a retreat, get a teacher. And so start with one of those, I say normal retreats. So a Vipassana retreat, very intense, 10 days, and then see where that brings you. And then, so that's one. And then also very useful also to have a teacher, right? Somebody who knows the territory. And the reason is because know the territory, they know the pitfalls, they know the shortcuts, they know how to get out of a rut. Somebody to ask questions to. You can do it by yourself, but without somebody to answer those questions, it takes longer to travel the same path. So so my recommendation, so do as much as you're comfortable with now, get comfortable, eventually go on retreat, get a teacher. Okay, Roger.
My experience is that the body will tell you how long you should do it. Okay, if you try too hard, you'll find that somewhere along the way you get frustrated, you give up. Right? You don't try hard enough, you won't test the limits. So I started off with just telling myself, I started off with trying to tell myself 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes. I actually set alarm and all this, set bell. But there's a problem when you do that. You anticipate. Okay, so you sit down here, you say, dong, let's start, let's go. Then you go, is it 5 minutes already? 5 minutes already? Then you look, no, 1 minute, bloody hell, 1 minute. Right? So I, somewhere along the line, learned to do this. I just roughly feel I know what time it is. I turn off the phone, I have as little distraction as possible, right? And then I sit down and I do the meditation. And whatever time I tell myself is enough, okay, at that point I tell myself, I think it's enough. I tell myself, okay lah, since it's enough, let's just do 1 more minute lah. Right? If it's not enough, you still can do 1 more minute, let's do 1 more minute. And 1 more minute, until the point you say, hey, I think I want to go and sleep or whatsoever it is. Then you get up, okay? Then you roughly see what time is it. Okay, then you realize that, okay, maybe this meditation was 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes. So don't bite on the time, bite on the quality of that sit, right? The quality of the sit is what you learn from the sit, the experience at that point in time. And then the next sit that you do can be 10 minutes later, 20 minutes later, 30 minutes, it can be next day, okay? So don't time it at the beginning. Now, at this point in time now, these days, my sit can be between 1 to 2 hours. And what I do is I replace some of my nighttime sleep with actual meditation. Okay, so say I'm supposed to sleep at maybe 12. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll start meditation around 11, 11:30, or sometimes even 12 o'clock. Then I sleep at 2. Okay, and you'll find that the quality is good, the replacement is actually very strong. And of course, I don't end at, say, I get out of meditation, I don't meditate anymore. Okay, I actually practice like lying down, doing a bit of sleep meditation, watching yourself fall asleep. And you find that the quality of sleep is a lot better than just lying down for 8 hours thinking you have slept. Right? And you are still meditating during that period. So in all, for that night, right, you have done 8 hours or maybe 6 hours or 4 hours of meditation, good quality meditation. So then you ask me, what do you do in the day? Now, in the day, very simple, right? I ditch my car, so I go and take bus. As I go and take the bus, I walk. And I do very, very mindful walking. I enjoy my step. Right? Of course, we don't walk like spaceman one step at a time. Right? So if they look at you, siao already. Right? So you enjoy the step. Of course, when nobody's looking at you at the time that we do the spaceman walk, we take one step at a time, right? We eat, we can sit down and enjoy for about 2 seconds before we pick up, especially when we eat alone. We don't need to talk to anybody, okay? We observe ourselves, say, like the example I gave you just now when we are queuing up for food, when we're waiting for bus, your mental process, your nama rupa starts to take over. You start to watch your thoughts. Why? Hey, I'm not rushing. Why is it that when the bus is at the red light, I'm feeling that, why can't it be here now? Why can't it be here 5 minutes earlier? Okay, so you get to watch all this. That is good for you, experience for you to actually contemplate when you do sit at night. So meditation can be 24 hours. Mindfulness can be 24 hours. Awareness can be for 24 hours. Okay, so it's depending on how you want to spend it. Okay. So at the end of the day, you find that there is an urge now, which I do have, right? I want to go for maybe a 3-day, 4-day, or 5-day absolute silence meditation. I talk a lot. Some of you know who I am, right? But sometimes now I feel that I may not want to talk at all. I just want to go somewhere and shut up for maybe 2 days to 3 days. Okay, the urge was the understanding, the experience will slowly bring you to want to do it. And that becomes the energy and the effort and the motivation to go after the 7 enlightenment factors. You will slowly get there. So remember, it starts with mindfulness, investigation, right? Energy, joy, blah, blah, blah. It goes this way. Okay? So let it arise naturally, but put some effort into the arising. Okay? Balance, middle path, I think it all works together.
Sorry, on the first question I had, so I reckon I should be easing myself off guided meditations to just sitting with myself. I mean, I love meditation apps, and the messages for each team meditation is fantastic. But I don't know if I'm supposed to go off it at some point.
Whatever, continue on if it helps, is helpful. I think Richie Davidson was once asked this question, and I think he gave a brilliant answer. Right? So the question that was asked to him is, what is the best form of meditation? He said, I know the answer. He's very confident. He said, the best form of meditation is whatever you're doing. That's it. So whatever is helpful to you, just do this.
I would say that you need to do a lot of your own work. Same answer, whatever works for you, but don't be shy to try. Right? So I think the one that I had a lot of takeaway is when I attended the Minggu's meditation for that 3 days, the Joy of Living, and the Ajahn Brahm's meditation for 2 days. And I wasn't shy to ask questions. Right? So when you ask question, because if you're aware, you will know that there are certain sensations, certain experiences that you don't know how to explain it. Right? Like for example, how do we stop thoughts from coming out? Right? We can't. Right? But you need to embrace it and manage it. Right? So over time, you find that the thoughts, like they say, move from water flow to river to lake. Okay. Minggu has this wonderful one. He says, whenever you have thought, what you do is you put out your thumb. Right? So whenever I'm talking to myself, meditating, you say, hey, later we're going to eat nasi lemak, then I put up my thumb. Okay, especially at the beginning, just now when we first started, right? When the thoughts is stopping you from getting stillness. Okay, so I start with that. Okay, it's stopping me. Okay, later eat nasi lemak, I put up my thumb. Until you shut up, then I put my hair. Then after that, I think, hey, are you sure you want to sit down here? Your backside very painful. I put up my thumb again. Okay, so after a while, you find that in between you put out your thumb, there is a short period of silence in your mind Okay, and then you say, okay. And that silence, because you accept it, we're not fighting it, right? It slowly ease. It doesn't disappear. What it does is it goes to the back of your mind. Okay, so I think it's good to try to explore things yourself, because that's what we're trying to do. But it's good to have somebody to ask also. I think we don't need to have masters. We just need to have good people to ask. I'm lucky I got him, so I bug him. Right? He gets emails from me now and then. We also, in Singapore, I actually started a practice together with Buddhist Fellowship once a month on Thursday at the BF East. So I actually adopt his Joy on Demand book as a meditation base. So if you're interested, once a month, I actually run a meditation session. If any one of you wants to attend, come. And if you have any questions, right, we can discuss on the day. If I can't answer, I will bug him. So you get to access to him through me. So I'm like the Tiao Tang one. So I write the email, send. Yeah, so that's what I do. So whatever works. Whatever that's work for you is good, then just continue. But always don't be shy to try new things, to learn new things, to look for people, ask questions, and then come back and try again. That's the experience I have so far.
Thank you. Highly motivating. Thanks.
Yes.
Before I ask this question, there's one point, because I want to preempt, there's a question I want to preempt, which is that what you just said, again, I agree with everything you said. And I know teachers who also give the entirely opposite instruction. So the instruction you give is don't focus on time, focus on quality. I know teachers who tell you precisely the opposite. Set the time, ignore the quality, just do the time. And so if you hear those things, who is right? Usually both are right. Right? And then analogy is like practicing, training for a marathon. So there are a couple of ways to train. One is short burst, and then a lot of rest, short burst. The other is quality. The other is you just run the whole thing, whatever works, whatever speed you can run at. So which is better? So it depends, usually. Yeah, whatever works for you. Basically.
Yeah, whatever works for you. So what we're sharing is what works for me. Right? So if you try, it doesn't work for you, then try something else. You can try the opposite. It doesn't stop. I mean, like Buddha has 84,000 ways of doing it. One of them will work, right? Or combination of 84,000 will work, which is mirror of things.
Yeah, then you still got 83,999 something. Sorry.
Yeah. Thanks very much for the enlightening talk. And actually, I have some questions for Tan Chade Meng, but on second thought, I think your brother fits into the answering also.
Yeah, by the way, my name is Roger.
Okay, Roger.
History, you remember you as Meng's brother.
Yeah. I thought I'm Chade Meng, but they don't agree, so I have to use my own name.
Okay. Actually, this question was asked, I will ask it on the behalf of my son, who happens to be in the same industry as you are. And in that industry, I believe life is quite intense. And I would say it's very intense. In fact, he knew this talk here, and he was supposed to come here, but he ended up in this office. It is a pity. So what words would you have for him? And I mean, you have been through it. What words have you got for him to get him out of this vicious cycle? Well, he is actually, to a certain extent, at the peak of his career, and it is a little bit pitiful if we were to pull him out totally. But yes, I mean, what is your words for him, or what are your words for him?
Okay, let me give you words for you instead. Okay, since my parents are here, so make them happy so that I get more inheritance than him. No, but this industry, the biggest evil of this industry is the evil of ego. The more successful you are, the bigger the head, right? The bigger the self, the more solid the self becomes, right? So what happens is that at one point you will hear things, especially in the financial world, don't play with me, right? Don't screw with me, or don't beep beep me lah. And that's a very strong solidification of the self. And you think that you're invincible. That's one. Two is that you think that all sacrifices that you make today is worth it, right? Because in the financial world, we don't talk about a few $1,000s when you make it. You don't talk about a few tens of thousands. It can be millions. And if you listen carefully, your son will probably say this: Dad, just one round, I'm a millionaire already. Okay.
They call it buck.
Yeah, $1, $2, right? In the financial world, $10 is no big deal. You're still sub-soila, right? So the ego, the money and the ego is inflating each other, okay? So as parents, you can only remind him you can do whatever you want now, but don't lose yourself, right? Because as the ego solidifies, the person loses himself, and that person starts forgetting that that there is life beyond the dollars and cents. And if his person is unlucky, he falls. That's the most difficult part. But that is the part where the person starts to realize that beyond the millions, beyond the bucks, right, there is life. And that's where within that pain and within that suffering, that's where the realization comes in. So I would say that you probably can't do anything much now, but always be beside them. And I'm quite grateful my parents, my brother here was always there, right? So be there and be ready, and just keep reminding the person, life is beyond this, life is beyond this, right? And today I realized that when the ego solidifies, we have $2, $3, $4, and then you find that I may be driving a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, and what, but so does he, because the industry, everybody's making the same thing. And because I solidify, I'm so strong, I want to be stronger than you, I want to be stronger, I want to be stronger than you, then I go for the next one. And you find that sooner or later, they'll get themselves in trouble. Or they'll have some problems, or there's some issues that will hit them. Right? So that's where you come in, you or your wife and whoever comes in, just to keep reminding, don't fall too deep into the abyss. And that whenever you are ready to come out, you are there to pull your son out. I think that will go a longer way than to pull him out now. Because pull him out now, he won't realize. In fact, he'll turn around and blame you if anything. Right? So that's what I feel.
So if the son was there, what would you say?
If he is present right now.
Okay, I say this to a lot of the big CEOs who are my friends, who does wonderful things to make themselves rich. And I say, bro, you will die, Oh, let's see leh. So, at the point in death, do you think you're hanging on to your money so tightly, but on the day you die, you're going to let go, right? So just remember that, how painful it's going to be, to let it go. So if it's going to be so painful then, and since you have it now, why don't you spend from here to then to learn how to let go, right? So learning how to let go is a gradual process, but you'll find that as they learn how to let go, it's actually it can be quite comfortable, right? So that's what I tell my friends.
I think he'll teach me how to let go first.
So that's exactly what I told you. So you need to let go first, so that you'll be there. But
I mean, the let go meaning assign what I have to him.
Yeah, that's what I do too for a long period. Right, Dad?
Thank you for that. The other question is, in a way, to him, ego is heavier than the money, which, of course, it fits on each other. the money, the amount of money that he makes for a company, or the amount of money that he makes for himself versus the money that he makes for the company is peanut. But the ego is so heavy that he wants to do a big deal so that those people in the industries know that, so and so cut this big deal. I think it's familiar in the, yeah. So the problem is that, and of course, again, what you say is money fits back into his ego. Honestly, how to get out of this ego?
You can't. You can't.
Don't try.
Don't try. Yeah.
Okay.
The more you try, the more you're hated.
Yeah.
So don't try. Let it be. Right. Let him do what he needs to do. Right. I recently had a conversation with a fund manager. I'll just drag this a little bit more. I have a fund manager, and he claims to me that he meditates so much that he can tell somebody's future. He reads palms very well. And that's one day, and he can tell people to avoid this, avoid that, and that person, or because of avoid. So he says, Rog, if you meditate so well, you're so deep into whatever you are, can you do that? I said, look, even if I can, I won't, right? For a simple reason, sometimes people have to go through the experience to learn how to grow. We may allow them to avoid a problem now, but maybe that problem is needed for him to avoid a future problem that may be bigger, larger, and more unfortunate. And you may not be there to help him anymore. So maybe you need him to go through that. So don't try to stop it. As I said, try to be there, right? When a person falls, there's nobody else around. I've gone through my pain before. There's nobody else around. All the so-called friends that you have, right, look at you and say, oh, okay, good luck to you, right? So that is when the person is. But right now, you try anything now, nothing will work. In fact, as I said, you become the enemy.
Okay, agree. Just like the moth going through the process to become a butterfly.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot.
No problem.
There's a question here, but while the mic is moving, I want to drag in by telling another story.
Okay.
Story relates to what you talked about earlier. There was this old monk, there's an old Zen master by the name of Ryokan, and he's one of the most famous Zen masters in the history of Japan. And so he came from a rich family, right? So even though he was a monk, his family is still very rich. And he has one nephew who has precisely the problem that you talked about. But worse than that, he was also a spendthrift, spending on money. And so Ryokan, his sister or brother came to him and said, hey, please, can you come talk to my kid? Ask him not to do that anymore. So Ryokan said, sure. So he came, spent some time with the kid, the young man. And the time together, he didn't talk about whatever he was supposed to talk about. He didn't give him any advice. Just spend time together. And then at the end of it, just before he was leaving, he told his nephew, can you take a shoe for me? He said, sure. He said, no, at my age, I can't even tie my shoes anymore. That's it. And then he left. And that was enough for the boy, for the young man. So blew my mind. Yes. So thank you. Yes, sir.
I work on the same dark side, so to say. And I have a question about that. I always like to keep a certain degree of morale in what I do. I work in asset sell down, so there's obviously a high degree of selection. What do I sell down? What do I not? I have a responsibility towards the investors. The more I discuss with people, you try to keep your composure, you speak to people, you take in various opinions. Is there such a thing as sliding morale? Because whenever you keep your composure and you try to understand people's view on why we should be accepting this deal, why we should be doing this deal, reputational risk, political risk, sanctions, etc., the more you find that there is a reason to do the deal. And you find yourself in the end saying, I fight too many battles. I mean, is there a way, is it worth staying in the company and saying, I add value because I keep, people on the right side of the road? Or is it that people are pulling me to the wrong side of the road?
Your industry.
It's your Q&A.
You're the one on
that
dark
was for
side.
Roger, by the way. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I think the moment you walk into the financial industry, assets industry, when we deal lots of money, to be right sometimes can be very, very difficult. So then the question is, what do you do when you do wrong, right? Do you choose to do the so-called wrong in your mind? My answer is that as an individual, we are too small to change the industrial culture. The financial culture is such that this is it. And that's how everybody survived. And thousands, if not millions and millions of people are doing that. And here we are trying to be, I'm not going to do this. And immediately you're enemy number one. Okay? So there are two choices. Either you say we leave the industry, or we get ourselves buried in the industry, but we keep ourselves clear. This is not what I will do, this is not what I'm not going to do. But sometimes we say, because there was a deal that I remember we did. Ultimately, we said, the person who did wrong won. And he made lots of millions out of it. Okay? But that doesn't mean that we cannot tell him, okay, now you made a few million out of it, can you take out some to do something else? Right? It can be investor education, it can be anything else. Right? We educate the people who get burned to learn to be smarter. Of course, there's the other side of the story where we say that we are trying to protect this person, we're trying to protect the overall good, the big retail investors, right? Like in SGX, I'm a stock market analyst, right? And you say, we are trying to protect the small investors, so we shouldn't get involved in certain things. But when you try to talk to retail investors, they tell you, very simple, Rog, I'm not here for you to be righteous, I'm here for you to help me make money. Right? So ultimately, I don't care what you do. If I make money, you're doing good. Right? So what we try to do is we try to make a balance. Right? We try to balance off the so-called perception of the wrong things that we're doing because we are in the industry, and we balance off with whatever that we have. Right? Some people say we donate. I do a lot of investor education during my time. I give a lot of free talks. I give a lot of warnings. If you notice. When I give Chinese talks and English talks, I give a lot of warning, right? And I give it very, very subtly so that I don't piss off the people that I work with in the industry. At the same time, I don't get those people into trouble, right? Because imagine when you're dealing with maybe 5, 6, 10,000 investors, right? 8,000 of them actually knows that something is wrong, but I just want to put my hand in to take that cookie. And they get caught. And the only reason why they're making a lot of noise is because they got caught. Right? If you have a real good conversation with them, you say, don't you know this? They say, yeah, I know. Don't you know that? Yeah, I know. So why do you put your hand in? Wow. I want to make money. I thought I wouldn't be the last one. Then they thought wrong, right? Then they put the blame on everyone else. So I think when we think what is right and what is wrong, I think we go back to this. Does it make me a better person? Does it make me a worse person? Does it make me want to pick up more desires? Does it make me more egoistic? Or have I done my best to balance out to be as loving kindness, as compassionate, as altruistic, and as equanimous as possible? Right? That's the question I realized that if you ask yourself, and all four we say, yeah, we have done all this, and I'm willing to take the blame for it, or I'm willing to take the shouting at me or whatever, but inside me, I didn't do anything wrong. Then I think to a certain extent, if you can do that, you can stay in the industry without remorse. That's what I feel so far.
I realize there's one major difference between my industry and your industry, tech industry, is that we produce value, right? So therefore, it's a lot easier to align goodness with profits. Because if we do something that the customers are happy by producing value, then they win and we win. But in your industry, you're playing a zero-sum game, and the stakes are very high. Huh? Sorry? Yes. Yeah, so I think that is a problem.
No, I think not just that, but the financial industry, if you take a closer look at it, right, all of us, wherever we are middlemen. We match the people who have the money with the people who need the money. And being the middleman, we have the most important thing that nobody has. We have the strongest of information. We have information that the rest don't have. So when I match him, he has the money, you have the project. When I match him to you, okay, he doesn't know very much about you, you don't know very much about him. I take advantage of this. And ultimately, I make the most money by taking advantage. And so taking advantage gives me the advantage. If I don't take the advantage, then I only make maybe 0.5, 0.6%. And so, as I said, this industry thriving from this, you cannot change it. Because once you change it, then nobody will be motivated to match, right? But do you say that I'm wrong? No, because he is also trying to make as much from you by forcing you to give him more than normal return, right? As a fund manager, maybe I can make 8%, but you tell him, I won't do anything for you. He will tell you, I won't give you the money unless you give me 20%, which is more than normal. So what does that make him? He's going for excess too. And you are thinking, oh, if I can only give you 2% and keep the rest, that's best for me. So this industry is like that. It's based on greed. And so how can you change greed itself? You can't.
Yeah, like I say, at the end, a zero-sum game. That makes it very hard. Yeah, makes it very hard to do good. But anyway, okay. Yes.
Yeah, yes.
Hi, Meng. I'd like to ask a bit more clarification on your thoughts on compassion, because you mentioned the example of someone who had gone away, sort of achieved this inner enlightenment, and then you encourage him to actually go back into the world. Mm-hmm. So do you think it's possible for an individual already touching the dead rat to actually develop this compassion and go forward? And the second part is, how do you distinguish between a person who's compassionate versus, or an individual who's compassionate versus someone who's doing it to get their ego even larger?
Okay. So we begin with the definition of compassion. Compassion is when you see somebody suffer and you have the motivation to reduce the suffering. And scientifically, compassion has three components. It has the affective component, which is I feel for you. So affect is emotion. It has the cognitive component, I understand you. It has the, most importantly, the motivational component, I want to help you. Right? So this is compassion. Let's see, I'm trying to remember the first part of the question. First part of the question is whether such somebody touching a dead rat can still develop compassion. Definitely yes. So anybody can develop compassion. So based on those three pillars of aspects of compassion, it's like there's nothing stopping anybody from doing it. Especially in the field of management success, and the reason is because it turns out maybe finance is an exception. But
and lawyers.
Okay, yeah.
And lawyers. Yeah.
And lawyers.
Yeah.
But in general, according to a study, so this is from the book Good to Great. This is, if you're interested in business and interested in leadership, I highly recommend the book. It's the most popular business book in history. And some of you might have heard me talk about this before. So in this book, it was a documentation of a study, a large study, done on the success of what makes a company great. Okay? So they looked at all the companies that was publicly traded, so they have the data. I think for a long amount of time. Can't remember how many years, but many years. And they looked for companies that were good companies, that became great companies. So good to great. And so they stay great for some large number of years, so it's not a fluke. And so they identified those companies, and then they try to figure out what changed, right? And there are a couple of findings, and the number one finding was a surprise to the person, the leader of the pack of the study. And he said he tried very hard to avoid a leadership explanation because that's just lazy, that's copying out. But at the end, they look at the data, they could not avoid leadership. Turns out leadership is the number one reason companies go from good to great. And the type of leader, the good to great leader, they call them level 5 leaders because they identified current levels. A level 5 leader is somebody who turns organization from good to great, and they have three characteristics. The first characteristic is they are a competent manager, of course. That's a baseline, right? And then there are two additional ones, which is that they are very ambitious, but also they're personally very humble. And these two seem to be conflict. And so the way it works is that these people are very ambitious for the greater good. They're out there, they're trying to change the world, or they're trying to benefit the community, or something. It's not about themselves. But personally, they're very humble. They don't really care about their own benefit. And it turns out that these people, they make the most outstanding leaders, and they bring organizations from good to great. I mean, in retrospect, for obvious reasons, right? Because these are people you want to follow, right? Because they're selfless and they have big vision and so on. And so if you look at good to great leaders, humble, ambitious, and we look at compassion, I feel for you, I understand you, I want to help you. Put them two together. You'll find that the first two down-regulates ego, right? So they become humble. The third one creates the conditions for ambition for greater good. Therefore, a compassionate leader, a level 5 leader, is necessarily a compassionate leader. Compassion is a necessary but insufficient condition for level 5 leadership. So therefore, that's why those leaders, that's why compassion will win out, because it's a competitive advantage. Right? So if for no other reason, that's it. There's a second part. There's a next part to the question.
Yes, the second part was when does compassion become egotism? So how do you distinguish that?
Okay. So how should I say it? So there is an argument, and I'm going to counter the argument. There's an argument that if it benefits yourself, then it is not altruism and not compassion. And I like to say that's wrong. Because of this, every time you do something out of pure compassion and pure altruism, the first beneficiary is always yourself. Right? You always feel better about it. You always feel happy. You always your mind will always be in a better place in terms of clarity and conscience, clarity of conscience, and so on, than before you had the intention of compassion and altruism. Therefore, there is no such thing as altruism and compassion that doesn't first benefit self. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think we have time for no more questions. So,
okay. 5 minutes, do take one more?
No, I think
take
one more. Yeah.
Okay, one more.
Let's have one more question.
Last question. Okay. Over here.
So how do we avoid the trap? Because sometimes I think the mind is very deceitful. It can lie to us, and we believe it's lies. So we tell ourselves, "Oh, I'm working very hard in this for this income because I want to provide for my parents, or I have to pay for the bills." But actually, sometimes it's a lie. If you sometimes and from a third party perspective, right, you can see it in others. But then, how do you avoid it in yourself? I think that's the difficult part.
Give me an example.
Like, for example, I might have friends who say they are working in this industry because it pays the bills and all that. But you don't really need that much money actually to pay for the bills. Your parents have CPF and all that. How much is enough, right? So, but you tell yourself this because it makes you feel better about being there, because maybe then you feel that you are being compassionate, but it may not really be pure compassion. It's actually tainted by the ego. Yeah.
I have a bar I set for myself, and may or may not be universal. But I tell you what I do for myself. So for me, the answer to that question is first being honest about how much joy and pleasure I'm deriving from those things, and then how much joy and pleasure I'm deriving independent of those things. And if there's too much imbalance, I know that's a problem. Right? And also, in addition, of course, how much joy I'm deriving out of compassion per se, independent of the material gain. So it's, measuring these 3 things and being honest about the measurement. How about you?
Like what you say, actually, right? Ultimately, we are lying to ourselves, okay? If we really enjoy the job and doing whatever naughty things that is involved, right? We're just trying to say this to make everybody happy. But if you're doing it and it's really, really very painful, okay, you'll find that the pain will force you to think for an alternative, okay? So I love to do this now these days. Just let it be. Because the mind and the body will tell you something else, right? And somewhere along the line, you will think of an alternative. Now, you're saying that you're not happy with this job, but I need to pay for bills. These are excuses. But actually, there's beyond that. There's also an inertia. Because in order for me to make a change to avoid this pain, I need to do something else also. I need to search. There's a cost in search. There is also, if it's a new industry, you have to get used to it. You got to learn. And so on and so forth and so forth. So when you're balancing this out, you say, actually, I think better to just stay here. Okay? So actually, the lie has two parts. One is to say why I want to stay here. The other one is why I don't want to spend any more effort to do something else. Okay? But when we sit down and actually do meditation and we calm our mind down, I love to do shamatha because I'm a lazy person. Right? And I find that the answers will actually come by yourself. And as I said, if we let our thoughts subside, move to the back of the mind, then what we have left is that the pure awareness then tells you, yeah, actually, I think there are other things to do. Then we put down all our guard, and if we need help, we will go and ask for help. And we will know who to ask for help because we know who will give us the purest answer straight in the face and what we want to do. Okay. So for those who want to continue to wrap themselves up in those lies, there's nothing much we can do. For those who have seen the light and they want to change, that's where you can help them or you can help yourself. So compassion, like what my brother says, loving kindness, and I realize other things like forgiveness and all this, right? It's not about other people, right? Somebody hurt you, how can I find reason to forgive them, right? But if somebody already hurt you, we are trying to heal. To forgive is so that we let down the person and heal our own hurt, right? To change is to let down what we think we cannot and to focus on what we need to do and what we can do. So I think loving kindness, compassion, and all these kind of things, including forgiveness, right, has to show up first, and then that person is ready to change. And if you're that person, then you forgive yourself and change. If you're not that person, then help the person forgive himself, herself, and then help the person to change by letting the person tap on the network of people they have or your network of people you have. So that's the way I see it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So as we close, do you have any closing statement?
Just now we went through composure. As I said, I think success is very much on composure. But I think that's not the end to what we are trying to do. Once our body is still, you'll find that the most beautiful thing happens. We start being able to see our minds, our thoughts, and our objective. In my last 10 months of meditation, I realized that the reason why we cannot develop further in our meditation, I see a lot of people say, I stop here, I cannot see light, I cannot see nimitta, I cannot do this, because they haven't learned to still their body, or they didn't learn to still the body. Once you still the body, then we learn to accept the noisiness of our mind. And once we accept that, then we have peace of mind. And when you have peace of mind, everything that everybody is asking here becomes very, very clear. Right? So shamatha and vipassana arises together. Right? To see something very deep, we need to stop to look at it. So until you stop, you'll find that you're not seeing things. So learn to stop. I think Teach says it very well. Learn to stop, learn to calm down, learn to heal, and from there, learn to see.
Yes, inner peace is the beginning of the end of all suffering.
Yeah, I guess so.
So this is the first time I'm doing this with my brother. And so I don't know, so I spent time in America, and then there's a popular show on public radio called Car Talk, and they're hosted by two brothers, Kirk and Kirk brothers, and they talk about cars all the time, and it's very popular. And they always end the show the same way. It's a 1 hour show. They always end with, you just wasted a perfectly good hour listening to us. and then one of the brothers will say, don't drive like my brother. And the other guys will say, don't drive like my brother. So I'm going to just end with, don't meditate like my brother.
Don't meditate like my brother.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.